The mountain did not welcome him with beauty or peace. It greeted him with silence so heavy it felt like judgment, with snow that swallowed sound and stone that remembered every sorrow ever carried across it. He rode upward through narrow trails as winter closed its grip, knowing the life waiting for him was not one he had chosen with hope, but one he had accepted with resignation. The marriage ahead was meant to be practical, bloodless, and cold, much like the land itself. Love was not part of the agreement. Survival was. And as the wind cut across his face, he believed his heart would soon grow just as numb. Before this story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet miracles that change lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who loves deep stories, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Wild West Tale. Your support keeps stories like this alive. He had learned early that expectations only led to disappointment. Orphaned young, raised by distant relatives who valued labor more than affection, he grew into a man who trusted work and routine far more than people. The mountains became his refuge not because they were kind, but because they were honest. They asked nothing except endurance. When the offer of marriage came, arranged through necessity and land agreements, he did not resist. He had nothing else waiting for him. The woman was said to be quiet, recently widowed in spirit if not in law, carrying her own history of loss. Two broken lives placed side by side, expected to function without warmth. It seemed fitting. The cabin stood alone against a slope, half buried in snowdrifts, its wooden beams darkened by decades of storms. Inside, everything was orderly and bare. A single table, a small hearth, rough shelves holding tools and supplies. There was no softness in the space, no trace of comfort. This was how he lived, and this was how he expected to remain. When she arrived days later, carried up the mountain by a hired guide before winter sealed the path, he barely noticed the sound of her steps. Another responsibility. Another weight. She was smaller than he expected, worn thin by hardship rather than age. Her face carried the quiet strength of someone who had learned to endure without complaint. Her eyes, however, held something unfamiliar to him. Not hope exactly, but awareness. She looked at the cabin, the mountains, and the man who would be her husband, and she understood the cold she had entered. Still, she did not retreat. The early days were exactly as he had imagined. They moved around each other carefully, like strangers sharing a shelter during a storm. Meals were prepared efficiently. Chores were divided without discussion. Nights passed in silence broken only by the fire and the wind outside. He slept with the same guarded tension he always had, expecting nothing, giving nothing. He believed this was kindness enough. But the mountain tests everyone eventually. Winter deepened, and with it came isolation more severe than anything he had known. Storms trapped them inside for days. Supplies ran low. An injury to his leg from a slipping axe slowed his work, forcing him to rely on her more than he was comfortable with. It was during these moments of weakness that the first cracks in his certainty appeared. She worked without complaint, tending the fire, managing the food, assisting him with steady patience. There was no resentment in her care, no expectation of gratitude. Only quiet presence. He began to notice small changes in the cabin. A cloth laid across the table. Herbs hung near the hearth. The smell of bread instead of plain boiled grain. These were not luxuries, but they were gestures. The space felt less like a shelter and more like a place where life might continue. He did not comment on it, but something inside him stirred, confused by warmth he had not asked for. The mountain, relentless as ever, delivered its harshest trial when illness struck. A fever took hold of him suddenly, leaving him weak and disoriented. In his delirium, memories surfaced uninvited. Cold nights as a child. Empty rooms. The constant feeling of being tolerated rather than loved. Through it all, she remained at his side, tending him with care that went beyond duty. She stayed awake through nights of shivering and breathless fear, anchoring him to the present. When he recovered, the world felt subtly altered. The cabin seemed brighter. The silence less oppressive. He found himself watching her movements, noticing the way she approached tasks with intention, the way she respected his boundaries while gently softening them. She did not try to change him. She simply existed with compassion. Spring came late and reluctant. Snow melted into roaring streams, and the mountain revealed brief windows of color and life. With the thaw came work that required cooperation. They repaired fences, cleared paths, prepared the land. Side by side, without words, something grew. Trust. Familiarity. A shared rhythm. He realized one evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, that he no longer dreaded returning to the cabin at night. The thought surprised him. For the first time in his life, he felt something close to anticipation. Not passion, not fantasy, but the comfort of being known and accepted without conditions. Her own story emerged slowly, through actions rather than confession. Scars on her hands. Moments of stillness when she thought he was not watching. She carried grief, but it did not define her. She had chosen to live forward rather than remain frozen in loss. That choice, more than anything, challenged him. The mountain had shaped him into a man of endurance, but she showed him the power of gentleness. She did not demand love. She earned trust through consistency. And in doing so, she rewrote the future he had assumed was inevitable. The true test came when disaster threatened the land itself. A late-season storm triggered a landslide, damaging part of their cabin and cutting off their only route down the mountain. Trapped and facing real danger, they had to act quickly. Fear surged, raw and undeniable. But instead of retreating into himself as he always had, he stood with her, planning, working, risking himself not just for survival, but for their shared life. They succeeded, narrowly. When the danger passed, something fundamental had changed. He understood then that fate was not something handed down by circumstance alone. It was shaped by choices, by who stood beside you when everything else fell away. As seasons turned, the mountain no longer felt like a prison. It became a witness. The cabin filled with signs of life. Laughter, rare at first, became more common. He learned to speak when silence was no longer enough. She learned that she did not have to carry everything alone. Their marriage, once a cold arrangement, transformed into a partnership rooted in respect, care, and quiet love. If this story is reaching something deep inside you, if it reminds you of the power of patience and the beauty of second chances, please take a moment now to like this video, subscribe to Wild West Tale, and share it with someone who might need this reminder today. Years later, when travelers passed through the mountain trails, they spoke of a cabin that felt warm even in winter, of a man once known for his solitude who now greeted strangers with calm kindness, and of a woman whose strength seemed to steady the very ground she walked on. Few knew the story behind them, and none needed to. The truth lived in the life they had built together. Before we end, we have one special request for you. Please comment below with a single word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Because sometimes, the most powerful love stories are not born from passion or promises, but from two people who choose, day after day, to stay, to care, and to rewrite fate together. One quiet act of kindness at a time.